The 50 worst, most dangerous small towns in the United States are presented in this video. We'll examine the gangs that dominate rural America and discuss the most outrageous crimes committed in each small town on the list. This countdown includes violent cities with populations of less than 100,000 people. Gangs like the Crips, Bloods, and Gangster Disciples are most widespread in poor parts of major cities like Los Angeles, Chicago, and New York. But in the past few decades, these criminal organizations have expanded to small, rural towns throughout the United States. Gangs terrorize these communities, using them as shipment points for illegal drugs like heroin and methamphetamine. Poverty rates are higher in small towns, so, as in the inner city, illegal drugs have a home in rural America. FBI data indicates that violent crime rates are lower in small towns than large cities, but there are exceptions. You've probably never heard of most of the cities on this list, but we'll start with Compton, since it has a population of less than 100,000 people, and it's where the Crips and Bloods originated. Without further ado, here are the 50 most dangerous small towns in America. Number 50, Compton, California. Compton has a population of 90,986 people and is located in the Gateway Cities region of southern Los Angeles County. It's situated south of downtown Los Angeles and is one of the oldest cities in the county. According to Neighborhood Scout, Compton is safer than 3% of U.S. cities. Following the Watts riots in 1965, crime in Compton rose sharply. Although the city was largely exempt from the destruction of the 1965 riots, it prompted middle-class residents to flee over the next few years, and by 1969, the city had the highest crime rate in the state of California. In the 1980s, Compton's violent reputation reached the national spotlight with the rise of local rap group NWA. The city became notorious for gang violence, primarily caused by the Crips and Bloods. After years of declining crime, Compton's murder rate skyrocketed in 2004 with racial conflicts between blacks and Latinos. 2005 was the city's deadliest year on record, with 72 people being murdered, the highest total in a decade, for a city that has ranked among the most dangerous in the nation for 30 years. Recently, rival gangs have agreed to end their beefs. In 2024, rapper YG led a peace walk through the streets of Compton in a bid to promote peace and unity between two of its rival gangs. The rapper was joined by members of the Treetop Pyrus and Fruittown Pyrus, as well as fellow Compton rapper The Game, as he hit the pavement in hopes of ending the years-long feud between the warring Bloods factions. In 2024, Kendrick Lamar managed to bring unity to Los Angeles, as he brought members of the Crips and Bloods on stage together at his pop-out concert. Fans celebrated the historic moment on X, with one person commenting, "Kendrick really uniting Compton Pyrus and Cali Crips on one stage. Memorable Juneteenth already." Number 49, Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Myrtle Beach has a population of 39,697 people and is located in the heart of the Grand Strand, a 60-mile stretch of beach in Horry County. According to Neighborhood Scout, Myrtle Beach is safer than 1% of U.S. cities. A 2024 article explains that gangs can be tied to 75% of crime in the area. The police department often deals with gang activity, including a shootout across Ocean Boulevard and the recent arrest by the FBI of 13 people in a Myrtle Beach neighborhood. There are divisions of Bloods, Crips, Gangster Disciples, and Folk Nation in the Myrtle Beach area, but they are loosely tied to the national gangs. Often, they take the gang name and act independently of the nationally known gangs. They also form their own subsets of gangs, such as the 15 Street Boys. The Myrtle Beach Police Department reports that most members of the local Crips are Caucasian males from middle-class families, who don't maintain connections with gangs in other jurisdictions. The Myrtle Beach Airport connects South Carolina passengers and cargo with nearly every major city in the United States, and with many major cities around the world. Direct flights from Myrtle Beach to New York and Atlanta make these drug distribution centers easily accessible. During the month of May, Myrtle Beach hosts Bike Week. Thousands of motorcycle riders, including members of Hells Angels and other outlaw motorcycle gangs, congregate in the popular vacation spot. During Bike Week 2000, authorities identified approximately 650 outlaw motorcycle gang members from 38 clubs, including members from at least 3 foreign counties. This gathering is a prime opportunity for motorcycle gang members to arrange drug transactions. Number 48, Holyoke, Massachusetts. Holyoke has a population of 37,628 people and is located in Hampden County between the western bank of the Connecticut River and the Mount Tom Range. According to Neighborhood Scout, Holyoke is safer than 2% of U.S. cities. Most of the drug trade and associated crime within the city is conducted by gangs, including the Latin Kings, Latin Queens, and La Familia. Of considerable concern are the Bloods and several local gangs, including Dirty South, the Flatbush Posse, the Nettas, the NHB Rollin' Twenties, and R2D. These gangs actively recruit juveniles at high rates and contribute to high levels of violence. Because Holyoke is ideally located on the I-9D corridor that links New York City to Connecticut, Massachusetts, Vermont, and New Hampshire, it has become central to drug trafficking across these lines. This trafficking has a major impact on violence in the community, including violence associated with gang rivalry. The gangs occupy substantial turf in central Holyoke, with substantial street dealing of opiates, including heroin and fentanyl. In 2013, 11 people were arrested after a multi-agency team of police raided a La Familia street gang stronghold and seized guns, drugs, and $38,000 in cash at A556 South Bridge Street apartment building, infamous to police. Officers in helmets and green fatigues entered the building and led people out to a Holyoke police van. In an investigation, officers said features an ongoing and open war between the La Familia and Latin Kings gangs. Over the course of a year, police have raided every apartment in the building, which they believe was La Familia's headquarters and prime drug distribution point. Francisco Diaz, 34, one of those arrested in the raid, was identified as the leader of the Holyoke chapter of La Familia. Number 47. Scranton, Pennsylvania. Scranton has a population of 75,805 people and is located in Lackawanna County. It's the main metropolitan area in northeastern Pennsylvania. According to Neighborhood Scout, Scranton is safer than 25% of U.S. cities. In 2024, the Lackawanna County District Attorney's Office announced the arrest of 9 people in connection with a large drug trafficking operation run by the Crips Street Gang. The investigation, titled Operation Blueface, centered around the Blueface Global Hookah Lounge. Authorities say the property, which sits off North Main Avenue, has been a hotbed for criminal activity and violent crimes for years. It was formerly the site of the Castle Club, which had been a center of criminal activity before it closed. Along with the arrests, authorities seized large amounts of cocaine, methamphetamine, fentanyl, and ecstasy pills, a pill press, several handguns, and approximately $8,000 in cash. A July 2024 article explains that Scranton has seen 5 homicides so far in 2024. The spike began after the shooting of Scranton police detective Kyle Gilmartin back in January. Police have called the shooting gang-related. Officials say a lack of detention beds is contributing to this problem of juvenile and gang-related violence in Scranton. Right now, there's nowhere across 13 counties in northeastern Pennsylvania to house the most violent youth offenders. Oftentimes, the young offenders will be sent hours or states away, or even be sent back home. Those who work with gangs across the state say that they have figured out the system. A lot of times, the kids are the ones that are putting in the work on the streets, stealing the cars, selling the drugs. They're the ones involved in the shootings and the drive-bys because they'll receive a much shorter sentence. Number 46. Bemidji, Minnesota. Bemidji has a population of 15,743 people and is located on the southwest shore of Lake Bemidji, the northernmost lake feeding the Mississippi River. It's nicknamed the first city on the Mississippi. According to Neighborhood Scout, Bemidji is safer than 0% of U.S. cities. In 2021, 3 native mob gang members, Robin Lucier, also known as Ratchet, William Reed, a.k.a. Left, a.k.a. Leftfield, and Joshua Hanks, a.k.a. Solus, were sentenced to prison for methamphetamine distribution throughout northern Minnesota, including but not limited to Bemidji, Cass Lake, and the Red Lake Indian Reservation. The native mob is a criminal enterprise whose members and associates engage in acts of violence including murder, robbery, and assault. According to court documents, in 2018, after receiving information about another fellow gang member's failure to abide by the rules of the native mob, Lucier directed Hanks to carry out an assault against the individual. Hanks admitted that on December 5, 2018, he intentionally assaulted the individual in part to maintain or increase his own position within the native mob. In 2024, a Bemidji man was arrested for 2 shootings near a homeless encampment. Charging documents say officers responded Wednesday afternoon to a report of a man shot in the head in an alley near the 2500 block of Bloomington Avenue. Officers provided medical assistance, but he was pronounced dead at the scene. A single 9mm discharged cartridge casing was found next to the victim's body. Officers looked at surveillance camera footage, which showed a man walking down the alley, pulling out a handgun, pointing at the victim's head, and shooting him. Authorities contacted an investigator with the Minnesota Department of Corrections who was familiar with the suspect and his appearance. The investigator looked at the footage and identified the suspect immediately, according to the charges. Number 45, Gary, Indiana. Gary has a population of 67,652 people and is located in Lake County, miles from downtown Chicago, Illinois. It's adjacent to the Indiana Dunes National Park and borders southern Lake Michigan. According to Neighborhood Scout, Gary is safer than 7% of U.S. cities. A 2008 analysis by the National Drug Intelligence Center explains that Gary is one of the most violent cities in the nation and has one of the highest per capita homicide rates in the United States. Violent street gangs such as the Gangster Disciples, Vice Lords, and Latin Kings are the principal retail drug distributors in Gary. Members routinely engage in violent acts in furtherance of their drug distribution operations. Street gang members commit homicide, kidnapping, robbery, home invasions, and assaults. Drug-related violence in the area often results from disputes between street gang members vying for control of drug distribution, territories, or drug and money rip-offs of dealers or buyers. Nonetheless, law enforcement officials in the region report that members of different and sometimes rival gangs engage in joint drug distribution operations. These gang members, or renegades, more frequently set aside gang affiliation for the expectation of high profits from cooperative drug operations. Gang violence isn't new in Gary, Indiana. A 1972 article explains that an apparent gang war for control of drug traffic has left 17 bodies dumped in alleys, streets, and parked cars, prompting an intensive effort by local and federal officials to stem the Gary area's heroin supply. The bloody feud over the lucrative local drug market reportedly started last winter, when the family, a coalition of Black Streets gangs in Gary, set out to extort protection money from the city's established drug pushers. Believed to be members of organized crime, supplied by mobsters in Detroit and Chicago, family members apparently pushed the pushers too hard, for a number of the gang's members, both male and female, began turning up with bullet holes, slumped over steering wheels, crammed in car trunks, or sprawled in an alley. The family is said to require protection payment of $50 to $200 a week, depending on the pusher's drug volume. If the money isn't forthcoming, there is a second visit and a beating. The third visit means execution. Number 44, West Memphis, Arkansas. West Memphis has a population of 23,825 people and is located directly across the Mississippi River from Memphis, Tennessee. According to Neighborhood Scout, West Memphis is safer than 1% of U.S. cities. ABC explains that 30 years ago, Arkansas witnessed one of the most horrific crimes in its history: the brutal murder of 3 8-year-old boys in West Memphis. 3 teenagers, famously dubbed the West Memphis Three, were convicted for the murders. Damian Eccles was sentenced to death, while Jesse Miskelly Jr. and Jason Baldwin were given life sentences. During the trial, the prosecution asserted that the juveniles killed the children as part of a satanic ritual. In the decades since the West Memphis Three were convicted, DNA technology rapidly evolved. In 2007, DNA testing excluded the three from all of the crime scene evidence tested and detected DNA of a man who could not be identified at the time. Following a 2010 decision by the Arkansas Supreme Court regarding newly produced DNA evidence and potential juror misconduct, the state of Arkansas offered the West Memphis Three a deal to let them go free, an Alford plea in which they pled guilty but maintained their innocence. The West Memphis Three took the deal in 2011 and were set free with 10-year suspended sentences, having served 18 years. In 2018, Marvin Mux, a Gangster Disciples gang member from West Memphis, was sentenced to 17.5 years in federal prison for illegally possessing a firearm. Mux was originally arrested by state authorities in 2015 after West Memphis police officers were dispatched to an area in West Memphis where 2 subjects were allegedly being held at gunpoint while attempting to repossess a car registered to Mux. While repossession employees were attempting to hook up the car, Mux jumped into the driver's seat and drove off in the vehicle, with one of the employees still in the passenger seat. After fleeing a short distance, Mux drove back to his residence. After the employee exited the vehicle, he saw Mux running towards him with a small black gun. The 2 repossession employees then got into their truck and drove away, while Mux was pointing the gun at them. During a search of the residence, West Memphis police officers located an SKS assault rifle and a .38 caliber revolver. Number 43, Schenectady, New York. Schenectady has a population of 68,544 people and is located in eastern New York near the confluence of the Mohawk and Hudson Rivers. It's in the same metropolitan area as the state capital, Albany, which is about 15 miles southeast. According to Neighborhood Scout, Schenectady is safer than 5% of U.S. cities. In 2011, 19 members of a criminal organization in Schenectady, known as the Four Block Gang, were charged with conspiracy to violate the RICO Act. The indictment alleges that the defendants were involved in shootings and narcotics distribution. The Four Block Gang operated in a multi-block area in the Hamilton Hill neighborhood of the city of Schenectady. This region is bordered by State Street, Strong Street, Brandywine Avenue, and Veeder Avenue. Four-block gang members guarded their territory to prevent drug sales by others in the territory or encroachment of any kind by rival gang members. In 2021, members of the Uptown Associates Gang and Downtown Associates Gang were indicted for their roles in two major drug and gun trafficking rings. The Uptown Associates Gang leader, Jamar Brayboy, known as Yen, allegedly employed a network of people to sell drugs brought from New York City and relied on Facebook to do it. The leader of the Downtown Associates Gang, Tyshawn Morris, aka Mac, also employed a large network of dealers who operated in Schenectady. Members of the Downtown Associates utilized Snapchat to traffic oxycodone, while members of the 50 Gang used the social media platform to post videos and pictures of illegal weapons. The 50 Gang are considered by law enforcement to be responsible for numerous drive-by shootings and homicides. Number 42. Spartanburg, South Carolina. Spartanburg has a population of 39,040 people and is located in a region of northwestern South Carolina known as the Upstate. 98 miles northwest of Columbia, 80 miles west of Charlotte, North Carolina, and about 190 miles northeast of Atlanta, Georgia. According to Neighborhood Scout, Spartanburg is safer than 1% of U.S. cities. A 2011 article explains that there are 31 documented gangs in Spartanburg. They have names like the Treetop Pyrus, Folk Nation, Serenos, Tres Vatos Locos, Bloods, and Crips. Officer Nick Hollinger of the Sheriff Department's gang unit spoke to children and parents at a church in Spartanburg. He said the gangs in the area are as visible as the Hells Angels, whose clubhouse is across from Westgate Mall. He showed a home video of what the local Brown Pride Norteños do to a fellow gang member when he doesn't follow the rules. Several gang members beat and kicked the offender while he was on the ground. Hollinger also showed footage from a patrol car video camera of the aftermath of a gang-related shooting between neighborhood gangs in March of 2009. It involved a chase and officers taking two suspects into custody at the entrance of Spartanburg Regional Medical Center. One 16-year-old is shown crying as his friend is taken into the hospital on a gurney. The boy later died. The 6 suspects, who ranged in age from 16 to 19 years old, received 4 to 20 years in prison for the incident, which set off a series of clashes between members of Park Hills, Southside, and Highland neighborhood gangs in Spartanburg. Highland has experienced extreme poverty and isolation for several decades, which has resulted in substandard conditions, a consistently higher crime rate compared to the rest of Spartanburg, and general disorder. The community has its own gang, the Highland Gang, also known as HLG, which has no rank or structure, and is constantly at odds with the Park Hills Gang, located less than 2 miles away. Highland also contains multiple sets, or cliques of traditional gangs, including the Bloods and Crips. Number 41. York, Pennsylvania. York has a population of 44,867 people and is located in the Susquehanna River Valley of south-central Pennsylvania. According to Neighborhood Scout, York is safer than 8% of U.S. cities. York City Police Chief Wes Colley explains that more than 20 criminal gangs do business in York, and that small army is carrying illegal guns and is connected to many of the city's shootings. Most of our crime revolves around gangs, Colley said. York is a bit unusual when it comes to gangs. It's so small that many of them know each other, and some, on opposite sides of the fighting, are relatives, Colley said. When asked about that, gang members have said to the police, yes, we don't shoot at them. We shoot at others. The criminal street gangs are now multi-generational. The retaliatory shootings started in another time, and neighborhood gang lines drawn so long ago that some of them have no clue as to why they're doing what they're doing. In 2016, 15 Latin King Street gang members received 15-year federal sentences for conspiring to traffic heroin in York. In 2017, Rolando Cruz Jr., aka Miko, was sentenced to life in prison. Cruz was a leader of York's Southside Gang and a member of the Bloods. When imposing sentence, Judge Yvette Kane noted Cruz's leadership in the gang that ravaged the community in York for over a decade, causing numerous deaths. At the sentencing, the government presented evidence that Cruz's gang-related activities continued from his jail cell while he awaited sentencing. The government asked for a life sentence and pointed to the evidence that Cruz continued to sell drugs and participate in violent retaliation while in prison. The Southside Gang operated in southern York, centered in the area of Maple and Duke Streets. There was no formal structure, but the participants included senior leaders. Drug traffickers engage in the distribution of narcotics, particularly crack cocaine, and shooters, individuals who committed acts of violence, including use of firearms on behalf of the gang and to protect its members from other gangs in York. The Southside Gang includes a group of violent drug traffickers originally affiliated with the Bloods. Violence against a rival York gang called Parkway resulted in death or shootings of members of both gangs and innocent bystanders. Number 40. Robstown, Texas. Robstown has a population of 10,335 people and is located in New Sis County, 18 miles west of Corpus Christi. According to Neighborhood Scout, Robstown is safer than 7% of U.S. cities. In 2018, members of a massive heroin distribution operation in Robstown were sentenced to 20 years in federal prison. Authorities seized about $100,000 in cash. The overall scope of the conspiracy was estimated to be between at least 10 to 30 kilograms of heroin. In 2022, Joe Daniel Davila was ordered to serve 120 months in federal prison for his role as a distributor of narcotics at various drug houses in Corpus Christi and Robstown. Davila was selling the narcotics at drug premises, also known as trap houses, which were operated by the Texas Mexican Mafia, aka TMM. Many of these homes were equipped with electronic security systems and had doors reinforced with braces to make possible law enforcement entry difficult. In 2021, Rudy Reyna, a Robstown gang member, was ordered to federal prison for conspiring to traffic 17 kilograms of cocaine. At the hearing, the court heard statements that described Reyna's role during the cocaine trafficking conspiracy and membership in the dangerous Texas syndicate gang. Number 39. Commerce, California. Commerce has a population of 11,672 people and is located in southeast Los Angeles County, approximately 6 miles east of downtown Los Angeles. According to Neighborhood Scout, Commerce is safer than 0% of U.S. cities. In 2024, a passenger was shot and killed on a metro bus in the city, just hours after city and transit officials announced plans to increase safety on the system, following a spike in violent crime on buses and trains. The suspect approached the victim from behind and pointed a firearm at the individual. The victim sustained a gunshot wound and the suspect fled on foot, and he was captured shortly thereafter. A 1994 article explains that Commerce is divided and controlled by two gangs, the King Cobras and Choppers 12. Both gangs originated in the early 1960s in East Los Angeles. Choppers 12 is predominantly Latino and was originally founded as a motorcycle club, and the number 12 referred to midnight. Through conflict with neighboring communities, Choppers 12 transformed into a street gang, and one of their main rivals were the King Cobras, also known as KK, another predominantly Latino gang in East Los Angeles. The Bandini Midgets was another Hispanic gang in the city of Commerce, operating in the Bandini Park area. Number 38. Muskegon Heights, Michigan. Muskegon Heights has a population of 9,815 people and is located in southwestern Muskegon County, just a 10-minute drive from the shores of Lake Michigan. According to Neighborhood Scout, Muskegon Heights is safer than 2% of U.S. cities. A 2013 article explains that it's no secret that the Muskegon area has loosely organized gangs that for years have been linked to a number of drug-related, weapon-related crimes, including some fatal shootings. Law enforcement, school officials, and community members have tried to put the problem in perspective, but struggle to find ways to control the rival groups. Muskegon County may not be Chicago or Detroit when it comes to organized crime, but make no mistake, gang activity is here, and it has taken its toll on once peaceful Muskegon neighborhoods, where residents are terrorized by groups of gunslinging, dope-dealing men walking the streets. Police say that a large number of the robberies, weapon offenses, and drug-related crimes that have long plagued the community can be linked back to neighborhood gangs like those taking over the areas of Wood Street and Mason Avenue in Muskegon, and other gangs in the city of Muskegon Heights. The problem has frustrated law enforcement for decades as authorities wrestle with breaking through a code of silence among gang members, as well as residents fearful of retaliation and stemming a criminal way of life that now encompasses generations. While not everyone refers to those groups of males in Muskegon and around Glendale Avenue and East Park Manor in Muskegon Heights as actual gangs, no one denies a long-time rivalry between those groups exists. Authorities have said a number of shootings, some fatal, have distinct links to one or more of the area gangs, which usually consist of males, ranging in age from 13 to 30. Because several recent homicides in Muskegon County remain unsolved, it's too soon to say just how many may have gang-related ties. Police say the Wood Street and Mason Avenue crews really began to get some financial backing from drug buyers in the mid-1980s. Crack was suddenly available at a reasonable price, and that's what fueled some of the organized criminal activity. The gang activity is crossing over city lines, and allegiances to specific groups are blending between Muskegon and Muskegon Heights. According to law enforcement, At least one of the gangs in Muskegon Heights has banded together with a gang in the city of Muskegon, making it more volatile and dangerous. Fatal shootings tend to result in retaliation shootings when associated gang members are involved, and the cycle is hard to stop. A 2010 shooting of an alleged Wood Street gang member, Brandon McPherson, 19 years old, may have very likely resulted in the shooting of 17-year-old Elijah Henderson. Authorities said some believe Henderson was part of the Mason Street gang. Number 37. Florence, South Carolina. Florence has a population of 40,609 people and is located in the PD region of South Carolina at the intersection of Interstates 20 and 95. According to Neighborhood Scout, Florence is safer than 1% of U.S. cities. In 2021, 9 Florence gang members were arrested and charged in connection with drug trafficking and firearms offenses. During the course of the investigation, agents seized crack, cocaine, methamphetamine, heroin, fentanyl, marijuana, and firearms. In 2021, 11 juveniles were charged with third-degree lynching and gang solicitation after an attack at West Florence High School. After viewing multiple videos, shared on social media outlets, and interviewing multiple witnesses, deputies believe the incident was gang-related. The video appears to show several people attacking a person inside a bathroom, with more people joining in. In 2009, Florence gang members were sentenced in federal court. Evidence in the case established that the defendants were associated with the 900 Boys Street gang in Florence. Also known as the 031, or October 31st Pyru, the 900 Boys gang committed crimes during the week leading up to Halloween. The group robbed plumbers at gunpoint of money, and they also robbed the Ingram Street grocery store at gunpoint. Number 36. Cleveland, Mississippi. Cleveland has a population of 10,401 people and is located in the heart of the Mississippi Delta, 19 miles southeast of the city of Rosedale and the Mississippi River along Mississippi Highway 8. According to Neighborhood Scout, Cleveland is safer than 2% of U.S. cities. A 2018 article explains that 18 suspects, including a number of confirmed street gang members, were arrested in a federal operation targeting violent crimes in Cleveland. The list of suspects includes known street gang members, with nicknames like Dookie Poo, Fruit Loop, and Pooh Bear, but federal officials say they are much more violent than their names sound. An indictment against 9 suspects states that they were members and associates of a national street gang, the Vice Lords, a gang engaged in drug trafficking and firearms trafficking. 2 of the other suspects were identified in court documents as members of the Gangster Disciples. The arrests come following an extensive investigation into violent street gang activity following an increase in violent crime in the Mississippi Delta. Northern District U.S. Attorney Chad Lamar said when the leaders of the criminal organizations are taken off the streets, it often follows that it rapidly brings down violent crime statistics in a small town. Number 35. Sauk Village, Illinois. Sauk Village has a population of 9,461 people and is located in Cook County, less than a 15-minute drive to the city of Chicago along Sauk Trail and Illinois 394. According to Neighborhood Scout, Sauk Village is safer than 2% of U.S. cities. SafeWise ranks Sauk Village the most violent small town in the U.S. The city reported about 55 violent crimes per 1,000 residents, and there is a 1 in 18 chance of being a victim of violence. According to SafeWise, you could combine the top 100 safest small towns crimes, and Sauk Village would overlap it 3 times over, with aggravated assault in Sauk Village is the most common crime reported, with 490 incidents. Violent crimes in Sauk Village occur twice as much as property crime. In a 2018 article, CBS reports that in South suburban Sauk Village, neighbors are finding bullet holes in the sides of their homes, and families are keeping children inside. While the police chief wants to keep them safe, he may not have the manpower to do so. CBS 2's Audrina Bigos reports families are on edge with the recent violence. When she pulled up to a home for an interview, the grandmother cracked open the door, stuck her arm out, and waved her inside, claiming nobody is safe in her neighborhood. Charlene Culbreth and her 14 grandchildren live in what they call a danger zone, saying they literally have had to dodge bullets. There are bullet holes on the next-door neighbor's house, as well as all over the boarded homes, next to where children play, on Carroll Avenue in Sauk Village. Charlene's grandkids have to play in the garage, so they can quickly take cover if someone starts shooting. 2 people were killed on their block this year. In 2018, a 4-hour barricade situation in Sauk Village ended with the discovery of an individual who died by suicide. Officers responded to a report that an armed offender had forced his way into a residence in the Candlelight Mobile Home Park in Sauk Village. When officers arrived, they tried to call the offender out of the residence, but the offender didn't respond. Cook County Sheriff sent a robot inside the home to investigate the situation. The robot allowed officers to find the individual who had a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Number 34. Albany, Georgia. Albany has a population of 66,877 people and is located on the Flint River in southwest Georgia in Dougherty County. According to Neighborhood Scout, Albany is safer than 7% of U.S. cities. A 2023 article titled "Just Keep Praying, Gang Violence Still Threatening Albany Communities" explains that WALB has been reporting on gang activity in Albany for over 2 decades, with many incidents going unreported. The most recent gang activity took the life of Antoine Penn, a man who had just married the love of his life. It also resulted in 6 young men being put behind bars. Many incidents like that have left residents to fear for their lives. All of a sudden, we start hearing gunshots. To be honest, we haven't been sleeping good at night, not knowing what's going to happen next. A woman who experienced a drive-by shooting 3 months ago said, "Just keep praying and ask God to protect us." Sergeant Gregory Gatt says right now, there are over 30 different gangs that are active throughout Dougherty County. The state of Georgia is in a crisis when it comes to street gangs. A 2020 article explains that some of the victims of recent local gun violence were in elementary school, when a war broke out between rival Albany gangs. A decade-long feud between the CME Rattlers and a Bloods-related group is still going strong and being stoked by social media exchanges between the rivals, Dougherty County District Attorney Greg Edwards said. The rash of violent crimes has included a number of drive-by shootings in which homes have been riddled with bullets from high-powered weaponry. Most recently, a 14-year-old boy was among the victims who had been killed in 2020. Much of the violence over the past several months can be traced back to 9 years ago, when gunfire first broke out between the two gangs. They've been at war ever since. Edwards explains that gang culture pretty much requires gun possession. If you're part of a gang, you're going to be armed. Our gang members around the state in general are getting a hold of the most high-powered weapons they can buy or steal. They are doing what they can to get the most potent firepower, including rifles with drum magazines. Drum magazines can be 50 rounds or 100 rounds. Stolen is a key word in the conversation. The theft of guns left in unlocked cars or from cars in which weapons are in plain sight is a pipeline that supplies guns to drug dealers and gang members. Recently, Edwards said, a stolen car contained a high-powered rifle, and authorities are anxious to find it before it ends up in the wrong hands. Number 33, Lone Tree, Colorado. Lone Tree has a population of 14,063 people and is located in the South Metro Denver region of northern Douglas County. According to Neighborhood Scout, Lone Tree is safer than 0% of U.S. cities. In 2024, the city shared a crime alert explaining that in the past several weeks, the police department has seen a noticeable increase in residential burglaries. Cash, high-dollar purses, jewelry, and other items seem to be the target. Suspects are gaining access to houses by shattering large windows or sliding glass doors on the rear of the house. The houses also generally back up to commercial property, open space, or a golf course. A 2024 article explains that officers say they are seeing a lot more drivers not only driving under the influence of alcohol but illegal drugs like fentanyl and methamphetamine as well. In 2023, Lone Tree Police made 66 DUI arrests. In 2024, the agency made at least 181. Police Chief Kirk Wilson says there have been multiple fatalities on Interstate 25. Some of them, he said, were alcohol-related. According to a 2025 CBS article, after nearly 40 years, the loved ones of a murdered Colorado man finally got the justice they have been seeking. Roger Dean was 51 in 1985 when he became the victim in a murder that was so horrific it was like a scene from a movie. A man in a ski mask broke into Dean's Lone Tree home, forced him to tie up his wife and tape her mouth shut. Then, the intruder shot and killed Dean. A backpack was left behind when the suspect left the scene. It took decades of advancements in DNA technology for detectives to link the suspect, with items left at the scene in the cold case, the backpack, plus a ski mask. The killer, Michael Jefferson, was arrested in 2021. The 67-year-old pleaded guilty in a plea bargain and was sentenced to 32 years in prison for murder. The victim's daughter, Tamara, said that her father's killer has never taken accountability. Tamara and her mother received threats of violence and extortion attempts from Jefferson in the years after the crime. And all of the years of waiting for the crime to be solved eventually became unsufferable for Dean's wife, D.J. She committed suicide in 2020, 7 months before genetic genealogical evidence wound up linking the killer to the crime scene. Number 32. Atlantic City, New Jersey. Atlantic City has a population of 38,464 people and is located in southeastern New Jersey on the shores of the Atlantic Ocean. According to Neighborhood Scout, Atlantic City is safer than 0% of U.S. cities. A 2013 article explains that a 5-month FBI investigation crippled a violent Atlantic City drug trafficking ring. That ruled with fear and intimidation to keep a $1 million business alive in the city's most troubled housing project. 25 members of the Dirty Block, or Crime Fam gang, were arrested in raids, carried out by more than 300 federal agents and state and Atlantic City police. The gang's reach included Stanley Holmes Village, Carver Hall, the Schoolhouse Apartments, and Adams and Cedar Courts. They distributed a large amount of heroin sourced from Paterson, New Jersey. There was a hierarchy in the gang, which was led by Michael Derry and Tyrone Ellis. Under them were distributors, enforcers, runners, and the youngins, the junior members who did street-level deals, and would often obtain weapons or carry out the violence. Women were used mainly as couriers or facilitators to help launder money and secure things such as vehicles. Some even gave their public housing apartments up as so-called trap houses, used to store and distribute drugs, according to the complaint. A bail bondsman, identified only as PJL, was also allegedly used to create fraudulent proof of employment to explain the source of bail money. While the Derry brothers talk, on one intercepted phone call about their love of the HBO television show The Wire, they are unaware that, like the Baltimore-based show, they are being overheard on wiretaps. According to a 2013 press release, Attorney General Jeffrey Chiesa announced that 28 people were charged in a major takedown of members of the violent 800 Block Street gang, who were dealing heroin and cocaine. The gang, which is based in the area surrounding the 800 block of North Maryland Avenue, relies on gun violence and threats of violence to control its drug trafficking turf and to settle scores with other gangs. Most shootings and homicides in Atlantic City are attributed to 800 block and the rival Dirty Block gang based in the Stanley Holmes Village. While these criminal organizations operate in defined sections of Atlantic City, their violence spills over through much of the city. Number 31. Lumberton, North Carolina. Lumberton has a population of 19,121 people and is located on the Lumber River. It is situated on Interstate 95 in southeastern North Carolina's Inner Banks region, 20 minutes north of the South Carolina border in Robeson County. According to Neighborhood Scout, Lumberton is safer than 0% of U.S. cities. In an article published in 2023, a police sergeant explains that North Carolina used to be painted red, a state where the blood gang was dominant. In the last few years, he explained, the state has turned blue, with the Bloods' rival, the Crips, becoming more prevalent. Most of the gangs in Robeson County are what Hernandez called hybrid gangs, picking and choosing from the symbolism of more clearly delineated gangs. In 2021, a federal jury convicted a Lumberton man, Emmanuel Billings, on a charge of possession of a firearm by a convicted felon. An investigation revealed that he was associated with the street gang, Folk Nation. Billings had previously been convicted of multiple counts of robbery with a dangerous weapon, possession of a weapon of mass destruction, and assault inflicting physical injury of a detention employee. In 2024, a man was run over and killed following a late-night argument outside of a Lumberton tobacco store. Billy Ray Huggins, 44, was struck and killed by a 17-year-old male who is facing a first-degree murder charge and remains at large. The incident occurred at Atkinson's Cigarette Land on West 5th Street. Investigators said the victim and suspect, who was driving a burgundy Chevrolet pickup truck, got into a parking lot altercation. The driver then got into his vehicle and intentionally struck the other person before fleeing the scene. Number 30. North Little Rock, Arkansas. North Little Rock has a population of 64,531 people and is located on the north shore of the Arkansas River in Pulaski County. It is situated in the heart of Arkansas. According to Neighborhood Scout, North Little Rock is safer than 2% of U.S. cities. In late 2015, the FBI and North Little Rock Police Department began investigating the drug trafficking activities of certain gangs in the city. Investigators soon learned the gang's source of supply of drugs came from individuals in Little Rock. Through the use of several investigative tactics, including the controlled purchases of drugs, multiple wiretaps, and the execution of search warrants, among other methods. Agents with the FBI located and identified multiple drug sources of supply and more than 60 suspects. In November of 2016, agents executed a search warrant at the West Little Rock residence of Aaron Clark, also known as Black, the leader of a heroin and cocaine operation. Officers seized more than $100,000 in cash and jewelry, 170 grams of heroin, a marijuana grow operation, and 6 firearms. A 2018 article explains that police arrested 2 teens in a fatal shooting at a North Little Rock apartment. Ty Paris Johnson, 18, and Shaquan Thompson, 17, were charged with first-degree murder. The 2 were arrested in the death of 58-year-old Alan Ray McGuire, who was found shot to death at 5120 Velvet Ridge Road at the Bluffs on McCain apartment complex. In 2019, Thompson lost his bid to have his first-degree murder case tried in juvenile court after a Pulaski County Circuit judge learned of the teen's juvenile convictions for robbery. Thompson is also known to authorities for his associations with the North Little Rock Street gang and rap group New Money, New Nature, which is linked to the Black Disciples, according to police testimony. Number 29, Ardmore, Oklahoma. Ardmore has a population of 24,847 people and is located on Interstate 35, 90 miles from both Oklahoma City and Dallas, Fort Worth, Texas. It is considered the hub of the 13-county region of south central Oklahoma. According to Neighborhood Scout, Ardmore is safer than 6% of U.S. cities. A 2014 article explains that 9 men were arrested in connection with what police call one of Ardmore's most violent gangs. ATF agents say the gang, who identifies itself as the Ardmore Hoover Crips, has been on their radar for a while because of dangerous crimes. A 2010 article states that a family in Ardmore was left heartbroken after the murder of Eric Knight, who was in his home with 4 other people when several men broke in. At some point during the robbery, shots were fired. 4 victims were able to escape without injury, and Mr. Knight was struck and killed at the scene. The police are now asking for help finding the people responsible for Knight's death. According to a 2023 article, arrests were made after weekend gunfire in an Ardmore neighborhood. Jenny Weckerly lives in a usually quiet neighborhood just off Rockford Place Road. Weckerly was outside working in her yard Saturday afternoon when she noticed suspicious activity happening down her street. I saw him and I was like, is he doing what I think he's doing? And then after he squeezed off a few shots, I was like, oh yeah, that's gunshots. No doubt in my mind. One guy went on north and the other gentleman was coming from the south, Weckerly explained. And he just stepped up into the grass and started firing. He fired like 4 shots. Then he took his gun, stuck it back down his pants, and he walked on down through here. No one was hit, and the suspect fled the scene, but he was spotted returning to the area on Sunday, where witnesses and police were able to identify him as 18-year-old Derek Washington. Washington has since been taken into custody at the Carter County Jail, where he will face multiple gun charges. Ardmore Police Sergeant Jake Glazener says they believe the crime may be gang-related. We see a pretty big uptick in our violent crime as well as our property crime during the summer months because it is warmer and people being more out and about, Sergeant Glazener states. Unfortunately, we have somewhat of a gang problem in Ardmore. A lot of our violent crime is gang-related or shootings. Drive-by shootings especially, they tend to be gang-related. Number 28, Gallup, New Mexico. Gallup has a population of 20,451 people and is located in northwest New Mexico near the Four Corners region. It's situated midway between Albuquerque, New Mexico and Flagstaff, Arizona on Interstate 40 and is bisected by historic U.S. Highway 66. According to Neighborhood Scout, Gallup is safer than 1% of U.S. cities. A 2018 article published on the FBI's website explains that they call themselves the Red Skin Kings, or RSK for short. And unlike most gangs on the sprawling Navajo Nation Indian reservation that occupies Utah, New Mexico, and Arizona, this criminal group was highly organized and extremely violent. Our SK's top leaders were Devon Leonard and Lucille Leonard, a mother-son team. According to an FBI agent, our SK was one of the most violent gangs we've ever seen. Members primarily operated in and around the remote northern Arizona town of Lukachukai. Devon and his mother had a legitimate business there, but selling cocaine and methamphetamine was the gang's priority. It was a drug-related murder near Gallup in 2014 that triggered the investigation that eventually brought the group down. On December 16, 2014, Devon and gang leader Kyle Gray shot and killed a Gallup man after a drug deal in nearby Wheatfields Lake, Arizona. Then they took the victim to a remote camp on the Navajo Nation, where they dismembered and burned the body and forced the victim's girlfriend to watch. A 2024 news release explains that a man is facing federal charges for murder following a violent, day-long crime spree in Gallup, New Mexico. The complaint alleges that on April 24, 2024, a family traveling south on U.S. Highway 491 reported to law enforcement that they had been followed, rear-ended, and shot at by someone sitting in the front passenger seat of a white SUV. Further investigation revealed that earlier that day, Rydell Happy, 30, and 2 others had been involved in a separate shooting incident in Gallup, where a third individual was shot at Happy's direction. After the shooting on the highway, the group continued driving south, and one of the vehicle's occupants, John Doe, began to argue with Happy. Happy then ordered the group to get out of the car, and once they had done so, he shot John Doe. Happy then grabbed a baseball bat and began hitting John Doe in the head. Happy and one of the others then dragged John Doe's body over the edge of a nearby cliff. Following reports of the earlier shooting on Highway 491, officers from the Navajo Nation Police Department were on the lookout for a white SUV. Officers later observed a vehicle matching the description and pursued. The driver fled, but eventually crashed the SUV, and 3 individuals, including Happy, were apprehended. Number 27, Alexandria, Louisiana. Alexandria has a population of 43,466 people and is located on the south bank of the Red River in the heart of Louisiana. According to Neighborhood Scout, Alexandria is safer than 0% of U.S. cities. In 2017, Bleacher Report published an article titled Saving Alexandria for Jalen Richard. NFL stardom is a means to the ultimate end. The former Raiders running back grew up in Alexandria, where he attended Peabody High School. The article states that Richard plans on changing lives in this poverty-stricken, gang-infested pit of hopelessness. When Richard brought his little brother and cousin to the West Coast, they couldn't stop asking questions in his car. There are houses on hills. Is that water? Blue water? Not bayou water. Is that beach? That's because the best way to describe Alexandria, he explains, is that it's a force field. Rarely can anyone escape this biodome of gangs, drugs, jail, and death. Alexandria isn't that large of a city, but it is one of the deadliest. With a crime rate of 105.12 per 1,000 residents, it is the 3rd most dangerous city in the nation. Ahead of Detroit, ahead of St. Louis. Take the M Murder Team gang that was arrested in April of 2016 for more than 50 crimes dating back to 2010. Crimes that range from criminal racketeering to attempted first-degree murder. 10 were initially arrested, with warrants out for 4 others, and Richard knew so many of them. To this day, some in that group have reached out to Richard from prison. According to a 2001 Louisiana drug threat assessment, the gangster disciples are located in the northern and central parts of Louisiana, including Monroe, Shreveport, Bossier City, Alexandria, Lafayette, and Baton Rouge. Police in Alexandria report that while overall crime related to cocaine distribution appears to have leveled off, criminals are adopting techniques that enable them to be much more efficient killers. Instead of performing drive-by shootings to settle disputes or eliminate rivals, dealers lure victims close to a vehicle by using attractive women wearing the colors of the rival gang. The shooter then emerges from a hidden position in the back seat to shoot at point-blank range. Oxycodone, sold under brand names such as OxyContin, Percocet, Percodan, and Tylox, represents the most commonly abused pharmaceutical in Louisiana. Also, Tussionex, a powerful prescription cough medicine containing hydrocodone, is already popular in the Alexandria area and is increasing in popularity elsewhere. Called liquid bars, the drug is mixed with juices and sipped. The drug acts as a depressant and is often used in conjunction with marijuana or alcohol because, from the user's perspective, the effects complement each other. In the past, a baby bottle was the preferred container to use while sipping liquid bars, although recently police report users prefer a juice or cola bottle because it attracts less attention. Tussionex sells for approximately $14 an ounce with a legitimate prescription, while police report it is bringing approximately $30 to $40 per ounce on the street. Many users in Alexandria obtain Tussionex by going to Houston, where they allege several doctors are running so-called pill mills, or in this case, cough syrup mills. Number 26, Cocoa, Florida. Cocoa has a population of 19,930 people and is located along the Indian River Lagoon, just west of Merritt Island in Brevard County. According to Neighborhood Scout, Cocoa is safer than 2% of U.S. cities. The police department's website maintains a top 10 offenders list. If you observe one of these top 10 offenders commit a crime, please report it immediately, the site states. In 2024, a raid of a property in Cocoa ended with 22 arrests involving a variety of charges. Deputies say they had responded to over 270 calls at 1431 Peachtree Street, also known as the Compound, over the past 6 years. These calls have involved issues like aggravated assaults, battery, false imprisonment, drug use, and even human trafficking. The entire property, including the various camper trailers, huts, and whatever else was there, were a disgusting mess that I wouldn't let a pet rock live in, Sheriff Wayne Ivey said. In 2016, a Cocoa man, who had a woman buried alive, was sentenced to capital punishment. A circuit court judge sentenced convicted murderer Vatis Kirkman to death for killing a 22-year-old Bahamian woman in 2006. Kirkman, who was already serving a life sentence after he was convicted of fatally shooting 29-year-old Willie Parker of Cocoa in 2006 while robbing Parker of his money and drugs, will now be transferred to Florida's death row. He had previously served time for burglary and battery, and was also arrested on federal drug charges before being charged with murder. Prosecutors say Kirkman had Doris Knowles buried alive in Cocoa because she knew about Parker's murder and was dating a Cocoa police officer. The main witness against Kirkman was Chris Pratt, an ex-boyfriend of Knowles, who testified that Kirkman forced him to buy Knowles before digging a grave, mixing concrete and then throwing the woman into her own grave before being covered with concrete and dirt. Pratt received 10 years for his part in Knowles' murder, as well as 10 years for his part in Parker's murder. Number 25. Globe, Arizona. Globe has a population of 7,179 people and is located in the heart of Arizona's Tonto National Forest in the valley of Pinal Creek. It is situated near the midpoint of the legendary Old West Highway that stretches from Apache Junction, Arizona east to Lordsburg, New Mexico. According to Neighborhood Scout, Globe is safer than 1% of U.S. cities. In 2019, 85 arrests were made by the Arizona State Gang Task Force. The investigation, which authorities codenamed Operation Globetrotter, focused on a criminal network believed to be selling drugs in Gila and Navajo counties. Authorities served 7 search warrants and arrested 25 of the suspects during a 2-day warrant roundup in Globe and neighboring communities. Authorities also seized more than 3 pounds of methamphetamine, 3 ounces of heroin, 5 firearms, and 4 stolen vehicles. In the late 1970s, the Dirty Dozen Motorcycle Club, also known as DDMC, established a clubhouse in Claypool about 10 minutes away from Globe. Outnumbering the local police, the club had virtual impunity to commit crime in the town, and members became known for harassing and assaulting residents of the area. The Dirty Dozen came into conflict the following year with Bad Company, a club from New Mexico, who were attempting to form a chapter in Globe, resulting in 2 local Bad Company members, David Howell and Laird Criley, being badly beaten and ordered to disband. Howell and Criley persisted in wearing their club's colors in the area, however, and they were summoned to a meeting with Dirty Dozen member Robert Chico Mora, who had been dispatched from Tucson, at a Globe roadhouse. Howell and Criley were both shot dead by Mora, who claimed he was ambushed by the pair in the bar's bathroom. 11 Dirty Dozen bikers from the Phoenix area, including club president Gary Greasy Stacy, were subsequently arrested in connection with the killings. Mora eventually surrendered and was charged with first-degree murder. He ultimately pleaded guilty to manslaughter and was sentenced to 5 years in prison in December of 1980. In 2018, 2 people were killed and 2 others injured following a shooting at a bar in Globe. The incident occurred at the Jammers Bar on Broad Street. The gunman, Sterling Hunt, walked into the bar where 4 people had been playing pool and shot them with a semi-automatic pistol for an unspecified reason. In 2021, a judge gave him 3 life sentences. Number 24. Anniston, Alabama. Anniston has a population of 21,167 people and is located at the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains, approximately 60 miles east of Birmingham and 90 miles west of Atlanta, Georgia. According to Neighborhood Scout, Anniston is safer than 1% of U.S. cities. A 1998 article explains that gang activity in Anniston has lessened since 1993, but gang membership has grown. The reason is that gang members are older, 18 or 19, compared to 14 to 18 5 years ago, and they're smarter than when gangs first appeared in Anniston nearly a decade ago. 3 major groups of gangs operated in the area: Crips, Bloods, and Gangster Style. A subset of Gangster Style is the Disciples, which originated in Chicago. A gang called OTB, or Out the Bricks, was responsible for Anniston's first known gang-related incidents in 1989. That year, police arrested 17 gang members. A 2018 article explains that 2 men in separate cars began shooting at each other on a Wednesday afternoon before a school bus got caught in the middle of the shootout. The incident happened on South Noble Street in Anniston. Authorities arrested several people in connection to the shooting. Police say the school bus was pulling out of the depot when it was caught in the crossfire and hit with several bullets. Luckily, there were no children on the bus. A juvenile was struck during the shooting and taken to an area hospital for treatment. Police say he is expected to make a full recovery. In 2018, ABC reported that gang graffiti sprayed onto an abandoned building in Anniston caused some concern for people living there. Police say the white marking, similar to the Star of David, is a known gang symbol of the Gangster Disciples. The criminal organization has been around Anniston since the early 90s. In 2024, 8 men were sentenced to federal prison and ordered to pay nearly $23 million for their involvement in a years-long plot to steal and sell property from the Anniston Army Depot. According to court documents and evidence presented during a trial, police officers and other civilian employees at the depot stole millions of dollars in military property from warehouses at the depot over a period of several years and delivered it to middlemen. The middlemen delivered the stolen property to the owner of a military surplus store to sell. The conspirators split the money from the sale of the stolen property. The stolen items included equipment that was designed to be attached to military weapon systems to provide operators with instant nighttime engagement capabilities and improved target acquisitions. Number 23. Flint, Michigan. Flint has a population of 79,661 people and is located along the Flint River, 66 miles northwest of Detroit. According to Neighborhood Scout, Flint is safer than 8% of U.S. cities. In 2021, 4 blood gang members in Flint were sentenced to federal prison for assaulting a 15-year-old boy. Court documents explain that an admitted leader of a Michigan set of the National Bloods gang and the 3 co-defendants believed the 15-year-old boy had disrespected 2 fellow gang members. As a result, the group punched, kicked, and stomped the 15-year-old. They beat him with a broomstick and robbed him. After the beating, they held the boy down and used a large knife to carve the name of the local blood set, Mob 662, into the boy's chest. A gang member then placed video calls to other gang members, bragging about the assault and showing them his artwork. The 15-year-old victim suffered permanent bodily injury as a result of the assault. In 2014, 5 Flint men were convicted of RICO conspiracy for participating in the Howard Boys criminal enterprise, which operated from 2002 until 2012. The Howard Boys was described during the trial as a street gang whose activities included murders, attempted murders, and drug dealing on the south side of Flint. In 2024, a member of Nick Mafia, a gang that terrorized Flint, was sentenced to 33 months in federal prison after being found with a modified handgun while on probation. Genesee County is in the midst of a vicious gang war between 2 violent street gangs, Nick Mafia and Tay Mafia, the police department said, adding a wave of retaliatory shootings between the gangs has overwhelmed the county. According to a post on the Flint Township Police Department's Facebook, the Flint Police Department said these gangs are responsible for 25 homicides, many of which were innocent juvenile bystanders, and approximately 150 shootings into occupied dwellings. Law enforcement has seized more than 120 firearms from members of these gangs. Number 22. Canton, Ohio. Canton has a population of 69,197 people and is located in northeastern Ohio. It's situated on Nemeshillen Creek, approximately 24 miles south of Akron and 60 miles south of Cleveland. According to Neighborhood Scout, Canton is safer than 1% of U.S. cities. A 2021 article explains that a federal indictment exposed Canton violence and information about the Shore Block Gang. Founded in 2005, Shore Block's goal was to preserve, protect, and expand the gang's overall power, which included acts of crime, from murder and assault to drug dealing. According to the indictment, the gang's activities were often funded or driven by the sale of cocaine, heroin, and methamphetamine. Shore Block's name is derived from Shore Avenue, specifically the 800 block, where members frequently gather. The gang's primary colors are red and black. Members and associates often use the number 800 as a symbol and reference it in graffiti and on social media, including YouTube videos. Other gang symbols include an 8-ball, W for West, or N, W for Northwest. Court records show these are the gang's most frequently tattooed symbols while also appearing on their clothes. Shore Block members and associates had or used firearms to commit violent acts dating back to 2011. On April 15th of 2012, one of the defendants allegedly shot and killed someone near 9th Street and Shore Avenue during an altercation with a rival member from the 14th Street gang. Members and associates, according to the indictment, would create rap songs and videos to promote the gang, posting on internet websites such as YouTube. One Shore Block member went so far as to write and publish the book Imprisonment, where the author identifies himself as a member, describes gang life, and acknowledges many Shore Block members. In 2013, 4 Canton men were sentenced to prison for their involvement in a drug trafficking ring in which cocaine, heroin, and crack cocaine was brought into Stark County and distributed by members of the raided R Street gang. This group is well known to law enforcement for causing serious trouble throughout Canton. Number 21. Petersburg, Virginia. Petersburg has a population of 33,309 people and is located in south-central Virginia, 23 miles south of Richmond. According to Neighborhood Scout, Petersburg is safer than 8% of U.S. cities. In 2019, federal and local law enforcement announced a major drug and gun operation in Petersburg put 8 members of the High Society Hit Squad gang in prison. According to court documents, gang members were indicted for trafficking heroin, fentanyl, and acetylfentanyl, and were held responsible for the sale of 8 firearms during the course of the investigation. One of the firearms was identified as a MAC-10 semi-automatic with a high-capacity magazine. In 2014, a member of the NTG gang, also known as the 9 Trey Gangsters, was sentenced to 114 months in prison for possession of firearms by a convicted felon and manufacturing counterfeit currency. The individual held the rank of Low Stain. NTG is part of UBN, aka United Blood Nation. UBN was the first unified blood gang alliance on the East Coast. NTG members are organized into lineups. There are multiple active lineups in Virginia. The high stain appoints a low stain who has generals, ranking from 5 stars down to 1 star, reporting to him. Soldiers are the lowest ranking members in the gang. The high stain of each lineup reports to 2 godfathers, both of whom are in New York. At NTG meetings, dues were collected, a portion of which was sent to NTG leadership in New York. In addition, meetings included assigning discipline to members who violated the gang's codes. Discipline may involve a loss of rank or a 31-second beating. A 2009 article explains that a gang leader that plotted to kill a Petersburg police officer will be spending the next 25 years in prison. Calvin Kelly, the leader of a Bloods gang in Petersburg, was sentenced at the Petersburg Circuit Court. He pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit capital murder of a police officer, threatening death to an officer by mail, criminal gang participation, and 2 counts of conspiracy to commit robbery. Number 20. Niagara Falls, New York. Niagara Falls has a population of 47,599 people and is located on the Niagara River across from the city of Niagara Falls, Ontario, approximately 20 miles from Buffalo, New York. The falls mark the border between New York and Ontario, Canada. According to Neighborhood Scout, Niagara Falls is safer than 6% of U.S. cities. A 2022 article explains that dozens of street gangs are operating in Niagara, contributing to an increase in the violent crime the region has experienced in the past few years. The gangs make their presence felt, with at least 20 serious shooting incidents since 2017. According to law enforcement, Niagara tends to be an attractive area for gang members and for people who want to get involved in human trafficking or drug trafficking because of the way the region is set up. With casinos and a lot of nightclubs and an active nightlife, people can come here and make a lot of money in a short amount of time. Although there are 2 main motorcycle gangs in the region, Hells Angels and the Outlaws Motorcycle Club. Much of the criminal activity in the area has been relegated to puppet clubs, allowing for the main or parent clubs to distance themselves from that criminality. 32 active street gangs have been identified in the region since 2021, and police have had contact with 159 members of those gangs, primarily from Toronto, while members from gangs based in Montreal and Nova Scotia have been identified as well. Local dealers are trading up their typical weapons, baseball bats and brass knuckles, for guns. In 2022, 4 suspected Niagara Falls Crips gang members were charged with conspiracy to distribute heroin, cocaine, and fentanyl. In October of 2022, a search warrant was executed, during which investigators seized approximately 59 grams of cocaine, 78 grams of heroin and fentanyl, jewelry, 3 phones, and approximately $19,000 in cash. Number 19. Tukwila, Washington. Tukwila has a population of 21,135 people and is located in King County, immediately south of Seattle. According to Neighborhood Scout, Tukwila is safer than 0% of U.S. cities. In 2014, the owner and manager of one of 3 crime-infested motels in Tukwila was sentenced to 1 year in prison for conspiracy to maintain a drug-involved premises. Kulwinder Saroya admitted he and his brother, co-defendant, Jaspal Singh, knowingly operated drug-involved premises at the Traveler's Choice Motel and Great Bear Motor Inn, and profited from the drug activity there. The brothers forfeited the 2 motels, their family home in SeaTac, more than $265,000 seized from their home and bank accounts, and a 2007 Mercedes-Benz. A third defendant, the manager of the Boulevard Motel on Tukwila International Boulevard, pleaded guilty and agreed to forfeit any interest in that motel, as well as more than $90,000 he accumulated from the criminal activity. In total, the defendants in the case forfeited cash and property valued at about $4.5 million. According to a 2023 article, a child is on a violent and seemingly unstoppable crime spree in Tukwila that police say has been going on for months, leaving many asking what can be done. Police say since February, a 12-year-old girl is accused of stalking elderly women and attacking them, then stealing their phones and purses. The first incident happened on February 28th. Police say the girl followed an elderly woman from the bus at the 100 block of Andover Park West into a business. The girl attacked the woman and stole her purse, but the victim did not press charges. On March 13th, the 12-year-old followed an elderly woman from a business near the 300 block of Scranton Boulevard. The girl attacked the older woman, knocking her to the ground, and tried to steal her purse. Number 18. East St. Louis, Illinois. East St. Louis has a population of 17,642 people and is located in St. Clair County, directly across the Mississippi River from St. Louis, Missouri, and the Gateway Arch National Park. According to Neighborhood Scout, East St. Louis is safer than 6% of U.S. cities. In 2023, an East St. Louis jury convicted 4 leaders of the Gangster Disciples for drug trafficking, witness tampering, and multiple murders. Court documents explain that the defendant's other acts of violence included a nightclub stabbing in East St. Louis and a non-fatal shooting. GD members also engaged in various acts of drug trafficking, including a scheme to smuggle the synthetic drug K2 into Missouri state prisons. In 2023, a judge sentenced two East St. Louis brothers to more than 30 years in prison each for kidnapping a man they had accused of stealing tooth jewelry from one of them. The victim is still missing after 3 years. Witnesses allege that the brothers are members of the notorious Waverly Crips gang, historically known for drug trafficking. A 2024 article explains that during a nationwide U.S. Marshal sweep, 3,400 fugitives were arrested between May and September, with 600 of those arrested in East St. Louis. According to the U.S. Marshals of the Southern District of Illinois, Operation North Star targeted fugitives and offenders in 10 metropolitan areas, prioritizing those with firearms and of high risk for violence. In East St. Louis alone, investigators recovered 172 firearms, 7 vehicles, 53 kilograms of illegal narcotics, and over $258,000. Number 17. Ocean City, Maryland. Ocean City has a population of 6,915 people and is located along the east coast of the United States between the Atlantic Ocean and Isle of Wight Bay. According to Neighborhood Scout, Ocean City is safer than 0% of U.S. cities. A 2022 news release explains that during the month of June, the Narcotics Unit initiated a controlled dangerous substance distribution investigation into 2 local individuals involved in distributing fentanyl and heroin in Ocean City. Through coordinated and investigative efforts, it was determined that Mark Adams and Jason Bumgarner were traveling to the Philadelphia, Pennsylvania area to pick up heroin regularly. Several search warrants were conducted during this investigation. Detectives seized 276 bags of fentanyl and heroin, approximately 1 gram of cocaine, and various prescription pills. In 2011, a federal grand jury indicted 35 defendants for conspiracy to participate in a racketeering enterprise known as the Southside Brims Bloods Gang, also known as the SSB Bloods. The indictment alleges that from 2005 to 2011, the SSB Bloods operated from western Maryland to the lower eastern shore, where Ocean City is located. The gang committed violent criminal acts including murders, shootings, home invasion robberies, drug trafficking, and witness intimidation. In 2002, Joshua Ford and Martha Crutchley were vacationing in Ocean City for Memorial Day weekend when they met another couple, Erica and Benjamin Sifrit, on a bus. They all went to Secrets, a popular nightclub, and then went to the Sifrit's condo. According to court records, the Sifrits claimed that Joshua and Martha stole Erica's purse, so Ben pulled a gun on the couple. After retreating to the bathroom, Joshua was shot 4 times to death, and Martha was later stabbed to death. The couple's remains were disposed of in a dumpster. Erica and Ben were arrested a few days later, but not for murder. The couple was caught robbing a Hooters store. When the police searched Erica's purse, they found the licenses of Joshua and Martha, who at that point had been reported missing for days. Erica confessed to murdering the couple shortly after her apprehension, but claimed the idea was her husband's. Number 16. Elkhart, Indiana. Elkhart has a population of 53,484 people and is located in a region known as Michiana, 15 miles east of South Bend. According to Neighborhood Scout, Elkhart is safer than 5% of U.S. cities. In 2013, Jose Alejandro of Elkhart was sentenced to 100 years in prison for attempted murder. Alejandro was convicted in less than an hour by a jury after evidence was presented showing he forced Flavio Contreras from his home by threatening to kill him in front of his family. Contreras' family observed Flavio's expressions change from happy and content to worry and fear as Alejandro promised them that Flavio would return in half an hour. Hours later, Flavio's mother called Alejandro, begging for information as to her son's whereabouts. Alejandro only told her that Flavio had misbehaved and lied to her about what had occurred that night. However, miles away, Flavio lay bleeding to death in a ditch on County Road 19 after being shot numerous times by a gang associate of Alejandro. At trial, Contreras testified that Alejandro had been a friend of his family before associating himself with the Latin Kings gang. An acquaintance of Contreras had posted an insult aimed at the Latin Kings on Facebook, which appeared to have motivated retaliatory behavior on the part of Alejandro. Being unable to find the instigator, Alejandro and other Latin Kings drove Contreras around, attempting to force Contreras to assist in locating him. To allow for retaliation, however, Contreras refused. Upon stopping in a remote area on County Road 19, Alejandro passed his gun to another Latin King, directing that Contreras be shot. After shooting Contreras twice in the head, once in the arm, once in the hand, and once in the back, Alejandro and his associates then beat him and left him to die. A passerby found Contreras in the early morning hours and contacted authorities who rushed him to the hospital for emergency medical treatment. Contreras suffered extensive injuries and spent weeks recovering. In 2020, 5 individuals from Elkhart were charged by way of a 2-count indictment with robbery affecting interstate commerce and using a firearm in the commission of a crime of violence. According to the indictment, a small group known as the Choppa Boys robbed a homeowner in 2020. During the robbery, the homeowner was shot in the leg. The homeowner, along with another person on the property, were also beaten repeatedly with guns, while the robbers asked about the location of a safe in the home. The robbers stole the safe, drugs, money, a handgun, and jewelry. After the police arrived, they obtained a search warrant for the residence and discovered it to have cocaine, marijuana, and prescription pills on site that were overlooked by the robbers. The statements the robbers made, including asking for an AR-15 pistol that was recently traded, gave the victims an idea of who the robbers were. Based on this and other information, 5 members of the Choppa Boys were indicted for robbery and discharging a firearm in the commission of a crime of violence. Number 15. Pine Bluff, Arkansas. Pine Bluff has a population of 39,123 people and is located in the southeast section of the state in the Arkansas Delta, with the Timberlands region to its immediate west. According to Neighborhood Scout, Pine Bluff is safer than 1% of U.S. cities. During a presentation in 2014, the Pine Bluff Police Department told the city's district transportation and security departments that gangs are everywhere. They're on your buses, in your schools, and in your homes. Bloods, Crips, Vice Lords, and Disciples are the 4 most pervasive gangs in Pine Bluff, but each gang has many branches, each of which may maintain its own identity and cultural norms. In 2022, a federal investigation focused on the pipeline of drugs and firearms between Pine Bluff and Little Rock resulted in the indictment of 80 individuals. The investigations involved the EBK, or Every Body Killers Gang, and the Lodi Murder Mob Gang. The rival criminal organizations are responsible for violence throughout central Arkansas. Pine Bluff police detective Kevin Collins was shot and killed in October of 2020 while serving an arrest warrant on an EBK associate wanted for a homicide in Georgia. In March of 2021, the FBI's Get Rock Task Force obtained a wiretap and used a total of 12 wiretaps through June of 2022. As a source of real-time information to intervene and prevent violence in Pine Bluff, Little Rock, and other communities throughout the state. Law enforcement discovered that the gangs were funding their violent activity primarily through the sale of large quantities of high-grade marijuana. The investigation revealed drug trafficking and travel between Arkansas and Texas, California, Arizona, Georgia, Mississippi, Tennessee, and Oklahoma. Number 14. South Salt Lake, Utah. South Salt Lake has a population of 26,122 people and is located in Salt Lake County. It shares its borders with West Valley City, Salt Lake City, and Mill Creek City. According to Neighborhood Scout, South Salt Lake is safer than 1% of U.S. cities. In 2010, 158 gang members were arrested in Utah, and many of them operated out of South Salt Lake. Among the gang members facing federal criminal charges is a member of the Serenos Alley Boys gang and a member of the Tunerville Rifa 13 gang. In 2019, 33 members and associates of the Norteño gang were arrested and charged in a federal drug case. During the investigation, agents seized methamphetamine and heroin headed to Salt Lake City from drug cartels in Mexico, and drug proceeds from Utah headed south to cartels in Mexico. Gang investigators documented Utah's first Norteño group in the mid-1980s, followed by several other subsets in the early 1990s. Independent gangs began associating under the Norteño umbrella in the early 2000s. The Salt Lake Valley has approximately 10 active Norteño subsets, with approximately 100 to 150 active Norteño gang members. In the Salt Lake Valley, the gang has been responsible for drive-by shootings, aggravated assaults, robberies, and homicides. In 2021, a joint FBI and DEA federal narcotics investigation resulted in the conviction of 23 federal defendants in Utah, taking out a large-scale methamphetamine distribution organization in Salt Lake County, run by members of 8 gangs and supplied by a Mexican drug cartel. During the operation and resulting arrests of the 23 defendants, law enforcement officers seized 41 pounds of methamphetamine and 17 firearms. Collectively, these 24 defendants were members of 8 separate gangs, and the organization was supplied by members of a Mexican drug cartel in Southern California. The gangs involved were the Serenos, Norteños, La Raza, Barrio Chosen Few, East Side Rascals, Baby Regulators, Soldiers of Aryan Culture, and the Tiny Oriental Posse. Number 13. Emeryville, California. Emeryville has a population of 12,732 people and is located on the east shore of the San Francisco Bay in Alameda County, bordered by the city of Berkeley to its north and the city of Oakland to the east and south. According to Neighborhood Scout, Emeryville is safer than 0% of U.S. cities. In 2006, federal agents raided 5 warehouses in Oakland and Emeryville. A drug enforcement agent explains that at 4 locations, we got indoor marijuana growth, and most importantly, we found this marijuana candy factory. We reported 25,000 plants. Officials say the locations are part of Beyond Balm, a marijuana candy manufacturer, with products that mimic the name and appearance of well-known name-brand candies and products. Products confiscated included Pot Tarts, a play on the name, Pop Tarts, Stony Rancher Lollipops, a Jolly Rancher mimic, Trippy Peanut Butter, which mimics Skippy Peanut Butter, Munchie Way, was similar to Milky Way, Budtella, was like Nutella, and Rasta Reese's was a remix of Reese's Peanut Butter Cups. According to law enforcement, these marijuana-laced candy bars and sodas look very much like the store-bought candy that we see on our shelves. A 2023 article explains that Emeryville police say they were on the scene after about 300 juveniles broke into groups and were involved in multiple fights near the AMC Theater on Bay and Shellmount Streets. Officials say the incident spilled over into a nearby Target, where teens pulled items off shelves, making a mess of the store and shoplifting. Although police wouldn't confirm the connection to the Target incident, they did say there was a link-up posted to social media, which originally called the mass amount of teens to the Bay Street Mall. An article published in 2020 explains that gangs of looters ransacked Emeryville stores along Bay Street. They stormed several stores, including H&M, Best Buy, Lane Bryant, BevMo, Uniqlo, and GameStop, racing out with merchandise. The first signs of looting surfaced shortly after 8:15 p.m., when Chopper 5 captured footage of criminals hitting a Best Buy store. At one point, a Best Buy van outside was lit on fire. Most of the store had been shut down since mid-March of 2020 because of the COVID shelter in place. When officers converged on one area to stop the criminal activity, looters were simply running away and focusing their attention on a different set of shops. Number 12. Monroe, Louisiana. Monroe has a population of 46,616 people and is located in northeast Louisiana on Interstate Highway I-20. According to Neighborhood Scout, Monroe is safer than 0% of U.S. cities. In 2024, the Monroe Police Department announced that for 2.5 years, they've made more than 100 gang-related arrests. They seized 21 firearms from the YNN gang and 18 firearms from the Deuce 5 gang. These weapons were used in crimes and connected to crimes. This one here, with the white upper receiver on it, was used for shooting at police officers, said Monroe Mayor Friday Ellis. KNOE reports that 2 additional arrests have been made in a Murphy Oil gas station shooting that left 2 people injured in March of 2024. In a press release, the police department said that so far, all of the suspects who have been arrested are YNN gang members. A 2022 article explains that over the past 2 years, the Monroe Police Department investigated the Deuce 5 gang and its members and learned that 20-year-old Cornelius Baby Boy Walker is allegedly the leader of the gang. Officers obtained arrest warrants on Walker for drug distribution offenses, and they received a search warrant for a residence in Monroe. In December of 2022, law enforcement arrived at the home to execute the warrants. As authorities searched the residence, they made contact with Walker and located the following items: 2 digital scales, a box of sandwich bags, a tote top covered in marijuana residue, a loaded 9mm Glock with a 30-round extended magazine and a fully automatic lock switch, a cup filled with marijuana residue, and a jar filled with 15 grams of marijuana. Walker was charged with possession with intent to distribute, possession of a firearm by a convicted felon, and possession of a machine gun. Number 11. Wilmington, Delaware. Wilmington has a population of 71,675 people and is located at the confluence of the Christina River and Brandywine Creek, near where the Christina flows into the Delaware River. According to Neighborhood Scout, Wilmington is safer than 2% of U.S. cities. In 2024, 10 individuals were indicted on more than 130 criminal charges, stemming from their involvement in the Wilmington area gang Exit 4, also known as the MAG, and MAG Boys. According to the Attorney General, Exit 4 is part of a vicious criminal underground. They terrorize innocent people and fuel the cycle of violence and retribution that prosecutors, law enforcement, and social workers spend their lives working to disrupt. The indictment includes charges in connection with 3 murders, 2 shooting incidents, and a gun arrest. In July of 2024, Oliver Henry was sentenced to decades in prison for the 2015 death of Jordan Ellerby. Henry was 16 years old when he opened fire with an assault rifle toward the porch where Ellerby and 2 friends were hanging out on Broome Street in the city's Hilltop neighborhood. Prosecutors say the killing was one of the first homicides in a string of shootings between the Shoot to Kill and Only My Brother's gangs, groups of teenage children that traded insults online and shot at each other on the street. Number 10. Jackson, Tennessee. Jackson has a population of 68,264 people and is located halfway between Nashville and Memphis along Interstate 40 in Madison County. According to Neighborhood Scout, Jackson is safer than 6% of U.S. cities. A 2023 article explains that 16-year-old Gerald Crossley was sentenced to life in prison. In July of 2019, officers with the Jackson Police Department responded to 38 Cinnamon Drive, where Cole Felton was found shot and killed in a Tahoe. A survivor, who was also in the vehicle, was able to give a description of the shooter, and investigators used a canine to track shell casings by the Tahoe into backyards of Cinnamon Drive, where they found a 9mm handgun laying in tall grass behind 57 Cinnamon Drive. The dog then continued to track from the gun to the residence. Inside, officers found Gerald Crossley and tested his hands and a black hoodie for gunshot residue, which both came back positive. Video found on Crossley's phone showed him holding the firearm that was recovered from the backyard. In 2020, a grand jury indicted Crossley for first-degree murder. During the January 2023 trial, investigator Ashley Robertson of the Jackson Police Department Gang Unit identified Crossley as a member of the Ghost Mob set of the Vice Lords street gang. Robertson explained the history of retaliatory violence between the Vice Lords and the Crips. While Cole Felton was not a gang member, he resembled a known member of the Crips. Crossley was sentenced to life in prison. District Attorney General Jody Pickens explains that this case was a tragedy for the innocent victim, who was mistaken for a rival gang member. In 2022, 17 individuals were taken into custody in Jackson as part of an operation focusing on illegal drug and gang activity in the city. Multiple law enforcement agencies joined together to investigate the streets of the city, leading to the suspects being arrested on charges including first-degree murder, indecent exposure, drug possession, and violation of probation. In addition to the arrests, 3 guns, cash, and various illegal drugs, including fentanyl, cocaine, marijuana, and hydrocodone, were seized. Number 9. Camden, New Jersey. Camden has a population of 70,100 people and is located in southern New Jersey, across the Delaware River from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. According to Neighborhood Scout, Camden is safer than 4% of U.S. cities. Gang members and mentors interviewed for a 2016 article believe about 24 gang sets, with 2,000 to 3,000 members, exist in Camden, many of them subgroups of the best-known gang organizations in America, the Bloods and Crips. Less than a year after President Barack Obama's visit to congratulate the Camden County Police Department on making the city safer, people are being gunned down on Camden streets at an alarmingly higher rate. The city logged 35 shootings, 5 of them fatal, in the first 3 months of 2016. 4 other victims were shot to death in the first 4 days of April. In one 26-hour explosion of violence in March of 2016, 4 residents were gunned down, 1 fatally. According to Rashawn Hornsby, president of the Centerville Simbas Youth Football Program, a lot of these kids don't have anyone to vent to and are self-medicating with Percocets, weed, Xanax, and they're carrying assault rifles. That's a dangerous recipe. Deputy Police Chief Joe Wysocki explains that now, not only are Bloods and Crips prominent in the city, 2 organizations for fledgling members, OTF and FTF, are operating as feeders or farm teams for the Bloods and Crips. The OTF gang was founded in Camden in 2012. OTF stands for Only the Family. Older members have been known to affiliate with established Blood street gang sets, including G Shine. FTF is a Crips subset that established themselves solely to oppose OTF. In 2015, an admitted leader of the Fruittown Brim set of the Blood Street Gang was sentenced to 151 months in prison for dealing heroin. Tyrone Tyson Sr. of Camden controlled the activities of the Fruittown Brims in Camden. He was released in August of 2013 from a 21-year state prison term for first-degree aggravated manslaughter and second-degree assault for shooting 2 people seated inside of a car and killing one of them. He began selling heroin in the area of North 32nd Street in Camden and sold heroin to an undercover agent twice in September of 2013, just 1 month after being released from prison. Number 8. Rocky Mount, North Carolina. Rocky Mount has a population of 54,245 people and is located in eastern North Carolina within Nash and Edgecombe counties, about 45 miles east of Raleigh. According to Neighborhood Scout, Rocky Mount is safer than 7% of U.S. cities. A 2016 article explains that authorities made 4 arrests in a string of gang-related shootings in Rocky Mount. On February 18, 2016, Rocky Mount resident Harold Bunn said gunfire from a car traveling on Burton Street hit his home. "Scary. I was scared," Bunn said. "I heard shots. Boom, boom, boom." Bunn said his 12-year-old nephew, who was sitting outside during the incident, fell inside the front door with a gunshot wound to his leg. The 12-year-old was not the intended target. The next day, Makeda Dracy, 13, was hit by a stray bullet on Nashville Road after an argument escalated between two nearby groups, authorities said. Police said a third shooting occurred recently inside a home on Woodland Avenue. Nobody was injured in the incident, according to authorities. Investigators believe the 3 shootings were related to gang activity in the Rocky Mount area. In 2023, a Rocky Mount leader of the G Shine Bloods gang, a subset of the United Blood Nation gang, was sentenced in connection with his leadership role in a violent drug trafficking organization. Tyrone Foreman, aka Ty Nitty, was sentenced to 360 months in prison after pleading guilty to conspiracy to distribute heroin, fentanyl, and marijuana, and conspiracy to commit wire fraud. Foreman used threats and intimidation to run his criminal drug trafficking enterprise, while his organization raked in over $250,000 in COVID unemployment fraud. According to court documents and other information presented in court, Foreman was identified as a high-ranking member of the G Shine Bloods gang in the Rocky Mount area. The investigation revealed that Foreman obtained thousands of dosage units of mixtures containing heroin and fentanyl from various suppliers spanning from Wake Forest to New York. The heroin-fentanyl mixtures would then be distributed throughout Nash and Edgecombe counties by lower-ranking gang members and other drug dealers working at Foreman's direction. In 2024, a Rocky Mount Bloods gang member was found guilty of murder by an Edgecombe County jury. The case stemmed from a deadly shooting that happened in February of 2021 on Branch Street in Rocky Mount. The victim, 27-year-old Markelius Chambers, was pronounced deceased at the scene. During the investigation, witnesses told police that Rel killed Kell. Rel was identified as Dariel Jared Hill, a Bloods gang member and drug dealer, who has been arrested several times for violent crimes and selling drugs in Rocky Mount. Hill was found guilty of first-degree murder by a jury. A Superior Court judge sentenced him to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Number 7. Saginaw, Michigan. Saginaw has a population of 43,185 people and is located in the heart of the Great Lakes Bay region along the Saginaw River. It's part of the Flint, Tri-Cities region of Michigan, which also includes Midland and Bay City. According to neighborhood scouts, Saginaw is safer than 4% of U.S. cities. The city's gang scene in the early 1980s involved youths fighting and occasionally shooting at each other, but by the end of the decade and into the early 1990s, several now notorious gangs began to form, whereas the mid-1980s included a rivalry between the Cliques and Crazy Eights gangs. The period from 1989 to 1993 was marked by 141 homicides in the city of Saginaw alone. The 6'4", Burt Street Crew, Mafia Kings, and Folks gangs rose to prominence. The spike in slayings was not coincidental. The Saginaw News' timeline, the result of combing through 30-plus years of articles, shows that the difference between the 1980s gangs and the early 1990s gangs was the availability of guns and the influx of crack cocaine. After the number of homicides in Saginaw hit a 30-plus year low in 1999, it doubled just 3 years later, in 2002. Police linked that spike in violence to the rise of 2 new gangs, the Sunnyside Gang, which occupied the city's south side, and the Northside Gang, which claimed the city's northeast side and former Daniels Heights neighborhood as its territory. By early 2008, police had arrested so many members of the 2 gangs that they no longer could function. The next 4 years went by without much discussion of gang violence. But after the city experienced 30 homicides in 2012, an ongoing rivalry between the East Side Gang and a new North Side Gang came to the forefront. The East Side Gang also has an ongoing rivalry with the Townhouse Bloomfield family gang that has led to multiple murders. Number 6. Fairbanks, Alaska. Fairbanks has a population of 31,856 people and is located in the Tanana Valley. It is bordered to the south by the braided Tanana River. The Chena River winds through town, providing a natural boundary for the small downtown area. According to Neighborhood Scout, Fairbanks is safer than 2% of U.S. cities. The 2010 Fairbanks Gang Assessment explains that there are at least 12 active gangs in the Fairbanks North Star borough. 94% of law enforcement contacts with gang members involve Crips at 58%, Bloods at 21%, and Gangster Disciples at 15%. Together, these 3 gangs accounted for 94% of law enforcement contacts with gang members. The most common set for Crips was Southside, 20 Block, and the Insane Gangster Crips, also known as IGC. Most gang members were 15 to 21 years old. Over half of Bloods and Crips contacted by law enforcement were 18 or older, but over half of gangster disciples contacted by law enforcement were under the age of 18. During the summer of 2008, a series of violent incidents took place in Fairbanks between the Bloods and the Crips. In late July, there was a fight inside the Walmart, and in early August, there was another at the Tanana Valley Fair. Persons known to be current or former members of the Bloods were later shot at outside the Eagles Hall by persons shouting Crips slogans. In 2021, a Fairbanks man was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison for stalking and attempting to arrange a murder for hire. According to court documents and evidence presented at his sentencing, Roger Keeling devised and solicited a murder for hire plot targeting his former girlfriend while he was in custody on stalking charges. He was indicted in January of 2021 and found guilty by a federal jury in August of 2021. In 2023, a Fairbanks man was sentenced to 75 years in prison for killing another man with a hatchet in a club in 2017. The attack was caught on video with a security camera inside Club Manchu, which is now closed. Number 5. Española, New Mexico. Española, aka the lowrider capital of the world, has a population of 10,431 people. It's located in the Española Valley on the Rio Grande, between Santa Fe and Taos, about 30 minutes away from Los Alamos. According to Neighborhood Scout, Española is safer than 1% of U.S. cities. In 2009, Rocky Dixon, a member of the Norteños gang, was charged with first-degree murder for the shooting death of Ivan Garcia, a member of the West Side Locos, or 18 Streeters. The incident occurred at a Sonic in Española. Garcia and Dixon were involved in a gang fight. Dixon's fellow gang members got bars and pipes out of a Ford Ranger pickup and attacked their opponents until Dixon fired a gun into the crowd, killing Garcia. In 2013, deputies arrested Dixon after he killed his mother by dragging her to death while he was trying to escape from police. After a tip that he was at a residence in Hernandez near Española, deputies chased Dixon on foot and found him hiding in the woods. Dixon had been sought by law enforcement agencies since March 3rd of 2013, after a pickup truck he was driving dragged his 59-year-old mother, Patsy Dixon, nearly 50 feet. Sadly, she died at the University of New Mexico hospital. Patsy was either clinging to or struck by Dixon's truck as her son sped away from law enforcement after his ex-girlfriend called police, following a domestic dispute. In 2024, an Española man was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison for kidnapping, torturing, and murdering a woman over an alleged $400 debit card theft. According to court documents, Jane Doe used Crystal Ramos's debit card to withdraw $400 without permission. Ramos, who is now deceased, enlisted Jorge Dominguez, Luis Lopez, and another individual to assist in a plot against the victim. On January 14, 2018, the conspirators lured Jane Doe to a house in Española under the pretense of socializing and using drugs. Upon arrival, the victim was violently assaulted and tortured, using various objects, including firearms and power tools, until Jane Doe succumbed to her injuries. Following the murder, the conspirators attempted to conceal their crimes with the help of Johnny Black by cleaning the crime scene, transporting the body to a remote location, burning the remains and evidence in fire pits, and burying the victim's remains in a shallow grave. The remains were eventually located. Forensic evidence collected at the burn site implicated the defendants in attempts to destroy evidence. Number 4. Danville, Illinois. Danville has a population of 28,206 people and is located approximately 120 miles south of Chicago. According to Neighborhood Scout, Danville is safer than 1% of U.S. cities. A 2019 article explains that in the city, homicides and other violent crime have been on the rise the last few years, and police say more are being committed by so-called gangs. Unlike traditional gangs, these hybrid gangs have no hierarchical structure. They have no code of conduct or discipline. These gangs popped up on their radar about 10 or 15 years ago when more people began moving to Danville from Chicago. Groups from Chicago came down and started claiming their territory. They called themselves So Icy, Rude Boys, and other names. The Danville gangs said they started because of them. They went by the 450 Gang, Honcho, and other names. They said, "We have to get these guns to protect ourselves and our families." A 2017 article explains that after several murders over the last few years in Danville, one group asked for a face-to-face with gang members, hoping to call a truce, but no one showed up. In 2024, a federal jury returned 5 guilty verdicts against Kevin Marshall of Danville, Illinois, for carjacking and the murder of Daniel Walter. Over 7 days of testimony, the government presented evidence to establish that on April 25, 2020, Marshall was riding with Walter and Marshall's girlfriend to an address in the 1600 block of Ray Street in Danville. Once there, Marshall told Walter to get out of the truck because he wanted to talk. Walter complied, and once outside, Marshall shot Walter 4 times and left him outside of a detached garage. Marshall and his girlfriend started to drive away in Walter's Ford F-150 before Marshall ordered her to stop the truck. He then returned to Walter and shot him 5 more times, taking his phone and other identification. Walter was discovered several hours later, but was not identified until the following day during the autopsy. Shell casings recovered at the scene were later matched to a Taurus 9mm handgun. On August 18, 2020, Marshall and his girlfriend were arrested during a traffic stop at a Casey's gas station in Danville. Marshall possessed a handgun used to murder Daniel Walter. Marshall also had several dozen methamphetamine pills in a black fanny pack. Number 3. Florida City, Florida. Florida City has a population of 12,582 people and is the southernmost municipality in Miami-Dade County. According to Neighborhood Scout, Florida City is safer than 1% of U.S. cities. A 2011 article explains that Miami-Dade has the 7th largest gang population in America. Florida City lies to the south and west of Homestead, and these 2 cities comprise the greater Homestead, Florida City area. Both communities called for an end to gun violence in 2024 after 2 deadly shootings. Police say Cantarian Cross shot and killed Johnny Stevenson in Florida City. Minutes before, investigators say several girls were fighting, including Stevenson's daughter, and he tried to intervene. Cantarian, 22, was charged with second-degree murder in the death of Stevenson, who was 47 years old. During a hearing, Cross's attorney claimed he was being choked by Stevenson when the shooting happened. The fight and shooting occurred near Northwest 14th Street and Northwest 1 Court at the girls' bus stop. Stevenson's daughter said the fight began as an argument on the bus with a 15-year-old classmate. She said when the teen sprayed mace on her, they started fighting. It then spilled out onto the street. She said she called her dad for help. When Stevenson arrived, he tried to break up the fight between his daughter and several girls, according to police. Cross, who also intervened in the fight, at one point pulled a gun and shot Stevenson, according to his arrest report. In 2023, a gang war between La Familia and 4th Street led to a deadly shooting in Homestead. Police arrested Monaco Galban, who lives near Florida City. They said he shot and killed rival gang member Jose Guajardo in front of his 1-year-old son. According to the arrest warrant, a witness said that Guajardo and his family are in a gang called La Familia, which has been having issues with the 4th Street gang, stemming from previous shootings and homicides. The 4th Street gang was also responsible for the killings of 2 of Guajardo's relatives, police said. In 2018, 2 children, ages 5 and 9, were playing outside of their home in Florida City when they were shot. Family members told CBS 4's Hank Tester the 2 children are siblings, a 5-year-old male named Eric and a 9-year-old female named Treasure. The kids were in the front yard of their home on 12th Street at the time of the shooting. Both were airlifted to the hospital and were in stable condition after undergoing surgery. Number 2. Bessemer, Alabama. Bessemer has a population of 25,037 people. It's located in Jefferson County and is a southwestern suburb of Birmingham. According to Neighborhood Scout, Bessemer is safer than 0% of U.S. cities. To start 2025, Bessemer was dealt with 2 homicides in the city, including a 13-year-old who was shot and killed while sitting in his home. Following the death of the 13-year-old, Bessemer Mayor Kenneth Gully released a statement extending condolences and urging peace. In 2002, a judge sentenced Rolando Antoine Williamson, also known as Baldhead, of Bessemer, to life in prison for leading a multi-million-dollar criminal enterprise. Forfeiture was obtained for 2 of Williamson's high-end vehicles, a $46,000 Ford F-250 King Ranch and a $37,000 Cadillac Escalade, over $100,000 in cash, $45,000 in jewelry, and all firearms and ammunition used to facilitate the drug trafficking enterprise. Additionally, the judge added a money judgment against him, totaling more than $36 million as a penalty for trafficking the fentanyl found in his home, more than 400 kilos of cocaine, more than 24 kilos of heroin, 10 kilos of methamphetamine, and more than 20,000 pounds of marijuana. Williamson grew up in Bessemer, a modest suburb southwest of Birmingham, with less than 32,000 residents, but had the hustle and savvy to lead the drug network blamed for supplying Birmingham's west side for years. In 2021, 156 people, including 28 gang members and 12 murder suspects, were arrested in Bessemer. Bessemer District Attorney Lou Bryce Washington explains that there is a gang issue in the Bessemer cutoff, basically neighborhood gangs. With the onset of COVID, they saw that as prime opportunity to try to take over and gain some turf. In 2016, 2 teenagers with ties to a Bessemer-based group known as M-Tray were charged with the murder of Iraq War veteran Mike Gelati. Police say M-Tray stands for Money Making Mafia. They get on social media, They take pictures of themselves with guns, with money, with drugs, Hoover Police Captain Greg Rector said during a news conference. They claim to be aspiring rappers, but in this case, they are property thieves who, when confronted by a homeowner, they take that to a whole new level and shoot and kill an innocent person. Gelati was shot to death at about 4:55 a.m., just outside his home, in the 5500 block of Parkside Circle. He was heading to the gym for a morning workout when police say he encountered one or more suspects breaking into his car. According to the affidavit, Gelati's wife, Heather, heard 2 gunshots and then heard a vehicle with a large engine pulling away from the scene. Gelati collapsed on his doorstep. He was later pronounced dead on the scene. Number 1. Osceola, Arkansas. Osceola has a population of 6,610 people and is located along the Mississippi River, approximately 175 miles northeast of Little Rock and 50 miles northeast of West Memphis. According to Neighborhood Scout, Osceola is safer than 38% of U.S. cities. Osceola is in Mississippi County, near Blytheville, where rapper Big Fizzle was born and raised. In 2024, an 18-year-old Osceola man was arrested in connection with a fatal shooting of a teenage girl. Drellin Heyman is being held in the Mississippi County Detention Center on a $750,000 bond for first-degree murder. 2 male witnesses said Heyman, who was a member of the North Side Street Gang, approached a 15-year-old member of the Grape Street Gang and struck him in the face with a handgun. Both witnesses advised that after striking the 15-year-old juvenile male, shots were fired, with Drellin being one of the individuals shooting. The girl was standing with the members of Grape Street when she was shot. Initially, Heyman claimed he pulled a BB gun out and hit the victim, then ran away. During a second interview, Drellin admitted to exchanging gunfire with a 17-year-old juvenile male, who is a member of Grape Street. Drellin advised that the firearm he possessed was a .40 caliber pistol. Following the shooting, Osceola Mayor Joe Harris said the violence needs to stop. In 2023, a jury found Perry Lewis McGowan Jr. guilty of second-degree murder, and he was sentenced to 65 years in state prison for the shooting death of Tyangus Mitchell, which occurred at Frank's Place, a pool hall. A witness told police that on the night of the murder, Mitchell was asked to move his car and refused, leading McGowan to shoot him. When officers arrived, they found Mitchell unresponsive and with 2 apparent gunshot wounds. Emergency services transported him to SMC Medical Center in Osceola, where he died. Do you agree with our list? Did we miss any dangerous small towns? Share your thoughts in the comment section below.